Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Harry Shelswell. He is a personal and spiritual development coach, a public speaker, the founder of a new management training program called My Management Philosophy. He's also an artist, poet, author, philosopher, and mediation and Qigong teacher. So this is my brief introduction to Harry, but the full bio will be at the end. But the question that I love asking everyone is, who are you in your own words? That's my favorite question for some reason. So how would you introduce yourself, Harry?
I'd say I'm really quite a philosophical character. I like to question everything a lot. I like to look into the meaning behind things that have happened in my life or maybe are going to happen. I'm quite, involved in psychology as well. I'm always questioning why I've done things in the past or why other people do things, and it helps me understand how I can make myself a better person as well. And outside of this, I'm very passionate. I like to do things, with 100%. I don't do things in halves very often. And on top of that, I'm very creative. I love music, art, poetry. I love writing poetry. And I really enjoy going into nature as well. And I guess on top of that, I'm really passionate about personal and spiritual development. It's been pretty much my entire life. And I find a lot of enjoyment peeling back the different layers of who I am and what this whole reality is and gaining a different understanding on it. But yeah, so I guess that's who Harry is on the personal level.
Right. Wow. There's so much there. But the question that comes to me, like, as a follow-up question, when did your spiritual, let's say, awareness start? How did you begin that journey? I'm curious to know.
I remember being about 14 years old, looking out the window of my mum and dad's house in my bedroom, questioning what this all was. And I guess that's probably where it all started, just looking up at the sky and thinking, what the hell is this thing?
Yes.
But then I was probably about 16, 17 years old when I properly started diving into things, which was more on like the psychological level. I started really questioning why I was doing things, and I had a lot of bad things going on. I was kind of brought up in a pretty rough neighborhood at the time, and I had a few bad things to overcome. My temper was one of them. So questioning why I was doing things, and then eventually that started this very deep inward looking. And I'd say that's where it started, but then it jumped forward massively when I finally got a laptop at about 17 or 18 years old and had access to all of this knowledge and wisdom from the internet. And that was, the start of a very profound journey.
Wow. Where are you now? I know you're a spiritual development coach, or a spiritual coach to me, healing and spiritual coach. So do you find that this spiritual journey, so-called, has a destination, or it's something that's open? We are always growing, learning as the body mind.
I think there's just so many different layers to it. I don't think it ends, right? You don't get to the finish line. Not that I'm aware of, but every time, in my experience, every time you feel like you get to the top of your journey, suddenly you break through the other side, and the top that you thought you'd reached becomes the new bottom that you start from for the next step of the journey.
Yes.
And this is, in my experience, what's been happening. I feel like, oh my God, I can't possibly know anymore. It's all been shown to me. And then you break through a whole new chapter of that development. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm a student of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, and they claim that there is a reality that's infinite, that's unchanging, that is a godlike reality per se, limitless. That's what we are. and that never changes, that it's always the same. Doesn't matter what the body, mind does, it's always the same. Is that something that, a concept that you have thought about it? Or we talked briefly off record today, but is that something that you would entertain, even the idea that there is a something here that never changes? It doesn't need
There
any
is
change.
definitely something here that never changes, and I've actually experienced it firsthand. Yeah, so about 2 years ago, I experienced something that people call a
Mm.
kundalini awakening. And I didn't actually know what kundalini was at this stage. So I woke up one morning, had crazy distorted noises in my ears, all my whole body just lit up like a Christmas tree, all of the nerve endings, and my
Yeah.
mind kind of just went into a thousand places. And I went into a very deep meditation up in this hill because I didn't know what was going on, right? And
Yeah.
it was like this lightning bolt of energy shot up through my entire being and just exploded out the back of my eyes. And I was in permanent bliss, permanent contentment, permanent, observation of life, detached from my
Mm.
body, detached from my mind, um, for what felt like eternity, right? And I was probably this lasted off and on for quite some time, and every time it would happen, I would think maybe 10 minutes had gone by, and I'd look at my clock, and it had been like 8 hours,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like seriously, it was
Yeah.
incredible, and I had this amazing realization during this time that because everything I looked at was perfect, it was just like shining
Yes.
forth with like the most incredible
Mm.
beauty, and I had this realization that this whole life is heaven, and it's our thoughts that make it hell, and it changed my life. It really did, and I've been fortunate enough to kind of slip back into this state of consciousness a
Mm.
few times since then. And so yeah, I believe it does exist. I feel like I've experienced it.
Yeah. So how does it help? Like not everyone honors or have those mystical experiences like you had and I had and so many people that I talked to had. So how do you help clients who are just trying to be more peaceful and happy and access the flavor of that reality?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. So, what my kind of main goal at the moment is to help people heal and help people come to a place of deep inner
Mm.
peace. So, I don't approach people in this spiritual sense, right? I
Mm.
just
Yeah.
approach people
Yeah.
with the tools that I've got. So, I call it like the holistic toolkit for a better life, right? So, I
Yeah.
equip people with the tools they need. So, when people come to me, depending on what stage of their journey they're at, will depend on how I help them, right? So if somebody comes
Yeah.
to me and they're just wanting to live a more peaceful life, then I help them with the tools like breathing exercises, mindfulness exercises, to come back to the present moment and to
Mm.
continuously detach from the things that they're kind of fighting all the time, right? And then depending on what it is they're actually dealing with, whether it's fear, anxiety, or depression, then that obviously takes us into the next stage. And if people do want to embark on a more spiritual guided side of it, then we kind of go down that road as well. But yeah, that's kind of how it happens.
Mm. So the topic is inner healing, peace, and finding purpose. So when I saw the word of purpose, it really caught my attention. So how, so many people look for purpose. Sometimes they feel like they feel sad or even depressed because they have not found that. There's something that they have not really realized yet. So how do you go by that, teaching people how to find their calling and their purpose? Is that really necessary to have in order to find
Well,
peace?
I think if people are generally searching for it, within all of us is a very unique pattern, right? Nobody is you.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
nobody can do things like you. So what I always tell people, in my experience, is about tapping into your authentic self,
Mm.
and allowing that to be kind of shown, right? Because nobody can sing your song, nobody can dance your dance. But the problem is with society, they're trying to mold people into a shape where we
Aye.
walk this way, we talk that way, be like them. And what it does is it kills your individuality, which is your power, right? So the more
Mm.
you express your individuality, the more you tap into your true authentic gifts of who you are.
Mm.
And then slowly what happens, you think, well, how can I give this to people as a service? and
Right.
then your purpose starts unfolding. But also, I think it's there's a huge part of this journey of finding your purpose, which you have to do the inner work as well, right? You have to go
Yeah.
internally, start peeling back the different layers of who you are, and then as a result of that, your purpose kind of blossoms from it. But I think depending on what I said earlier, what stage you're at of your soul's development.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
some people, their purpose in this lifetime might just be to have a family, right? To start a beautiful family.
Yeah.
Other people's purpose might be to do something much, much different to that, like something we're doing, or maybe it's writing a book or starting a coffee shop or something. So I think everyone's purpose will be massively different.
Yes. And I wonder if that, because has been my experience too, the more I uncovered the calling, the purpose of this body mind, the more I could see the fear, I had to tackle a lot using your word, fear. It was not easy really to be mean, to really say the things that I wanted to say and do this podcast in the sense that I have written books and done other things, but kind of interact with people in an authentic way, in a sense of truth. I'm really interested in truth, so I can't really entertain anything that doesn't sound real, true to my heart. And sometimes, I say things here to people, they will say something, some coaches even, and I can't help it but just say, tell them what I know to be true. So I would love to hear from you, like, how do we give ourselves fully to that purpose without fear? It's not easy, right, Harry?
It's not easy, and I think it's a part of everyone's path, right? And
Right.
the greater the path you walk, the more challenges you have to get through. And unfortunately, the fears, the doubts, the guilt, the uncertainties will increase the
Yeah.
greater the path you want to walk, right? But one of my favorite quotes is that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek,
Mm,
because in my experience, it's on the other side of that wall of fear that you get what you want. And the way I explain it to people is, when you do the things you're scared of, they eventually become
yeah.
the stepping stones for the next stage of
Mm,
your journey, right? And then
mm,
you look back
yeah.
and you think, wow, so then it makes you want to do the next thing you're scared of,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And it becomes, all of these things that are above you, you kind of climb up and grab hold of them, and then they become
Yeah.
the floor that you walk on, right? And then you just keep
Mm,
climbing higher. And that's kind of how I allow people to understand it. But when it comes to fear as well, we have to understand it's an illusion. Our fear is, you know, fear is a natural response to things, and usually it's danger, right? And I've explained this, like, if your house is on fire or you're getting chased by a bear, then fear has a logical, reasonable
right.
explanation to be in your life. But if it's not, it's just your nervous response system, and you're believing these kind of emotions going through your body, and
Ah,
and then it kind of starts the whole chain reaction of fear, anxiety, and you get trapped in it, right? But something that changed my life is I was dealing with a lot of fear at one point in time. And I went internally and I closed my eyes and I just started asking myself the simple question as to who is
mm,
scared, right? Just a simple
mm,
question.
yeah.
Who is scared? And then I said, what is scared, right? I kind of located my fear. Where is it hiding? Eventually,
Yeah.
I backed the fear into a corner where it had to do one of two things. It either comes forward with a logical explanation as to why it's in your life, or it disappears.
Ah,
9 times out of
right.
10, I confront my fear in this way. My fear vanishes. It doesn't even try to explain itself, right? So I allow people to understand this. Confront your
Wow.
fear before you believe in it.
That's powerful. Yeah.
Otherwise you just start believing in it all of the time and it's not real, right? And it creates this chaotic rhythm inside your body. The
Yeah.
neurological activity in your brain just goes pew, and it creates chaos, right?
Yeah. I think I had it happening how many times? A few times with panic attacks. It was so powerful. Then I couldn't do that exercise that you just mentioned. Of course, I became much better at it now. And then I just let it be. And I just ignore it altogether. So, have you had those experiences with you or any of your clients? Because I have had, and it was not fun. It was really not
I
fun,
have had
challenging.
those actually, yeah, and I it was actually one of those times that brought about my spiritual awakening. You know, it was in the heat of the chaos that I broke through the
Yeah.
other side. And I guess the way I've explained it to people is like, say, like you're in a room, you're locked in a room, but it's just comfortable enough for you to kind of stay there. You don't feel the need to break out of it, right? But if
Yeah.
all of a sudden absolute chaos broke out in that room, you're going to run around looking for a handle on the wall to try and get out of it, right? And somebody said to me when I went to them during that stage, they said, you know, this is a blessing from the divine. This is the divine giving you a chance to wake up, because you've got to get out of it now, you know. And as it happens,
Yeah.
it did. I closed my eyes and I asked myself, who's watching this all go on right now? And it was like I snapped out of it and realized I wasn't the mind, I wasn't the body, I was the witness of it. And as a result of
Yeah.
that, I broke into what feels like permanent contentment now, because now anytime the mind says something that is offensive to me or I don't like or feeding an insecurity, I just watch it. I don't participate in it anymore, right?
That's it.
So it was a blessing, but I went through a stage as well where I was going into panic attacks. But I think also your mind and your nervous system will try and pull you back into comfort, right? If you're stepping into unknown territory, you've been a slave to the mind your whole life. When you burst out the other side of that and finally you're free. And I wrote a quote about this recently, actually. It was really
Oh, love your
interesting.
quotes. Yeah.
And yeah, and what I wrote was that we've been trapped for so long that when we break free, a part of us wants to go back, you know? And this was my
Wow.
experience. It was like I broke through the other side, and it was such a new experience that part of me was like, oh wow, it's now uncomfortable being comfortable, right? And peaceful.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was another challenge I had to overcome, to actually be comfortable with being permanently content and peaceful.
Yeah. That's another thing. So it is actually possible to break free and then go back to imprisonment.
Yeah, it is. And you
Wow.
will repeat that so many times until you eventually let go of it, because you're attached, you know. Essentially, I feel like we are beings of eternal bliss attached to our own misery, you know. And without problems and chaos, most people would be lost in life. And I actually have clients come to me, and when I teach them that they can reach permanent peace, you'd be
Yeah.
surprised how many of them hesitate to actually take that next step.
So do you have a vision for that? Because I love the big picture. I'm always looking for that big picture. So where do you see this, not as an ending, but what is the evolution of the human experience? Are we somehow getting there in a sense of freedom?
I think we're on the brink of the biggest transition we have ever seen in the history of this earth, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, essentially what we're here to do is we're here to heal, we're here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to evolve, and then we pass on to the next stage of our existence, you know. And if people are consciously on this journey, you know, you can do in 5 years what might take people 5 lifetimes, you know. But essentially we're all on the spiritual journey, right? Whether you're sat behind a laptop, working in an office, you know, in a corporate office
Yeah.
somewhere, or you're more heavily involved in it, like we are all on the spiritual journey, right? This
True.
this
Yeah.
is the spiritual journey. But I think the way I can see this going is more people are understanding that they can't live a life in pain and in fear and in turmoil. And people generally want to change that. And I think that's where people like us now are stepping in to help people make that transition, you know. And for me, like I say, what I'm essentially doing is helping people heal and helping people reach a deeper state of peace. And I think
Yeah.
until we all make that conscious effort, the world is going to continue to manifest problems. You know, I spend a lot of time with the senior monks from the Wat Phra Dhammakaya. They're a Buddhist Thai meditation group down the
Yeah.
road from where I live, and I've spent a lot of time with the senior monks. And the way they explained it is they kind of said that everything we look at that's not nature was once a thought in somebody's head, right? The buildings, the cars, the houses,
Yeah.
our clothes.
Yeah.
So this is our thoughts that are creating reality. So until we individually bring peace to our own being, we're all going to continuously unconsciously manifest problems. So until we end the sickness in our own heart and the sickness in our own minds, we're going to continue to manifest a new one. Every time we find a cure for a virus, we will manifest a new one because we still have the sickness within
Mm,
ourselves. So it's up to all of us individually to make that change and start that process ourselves, because if you do it, then the whole world becomes one step closer towards world peace, right? If five of us do it, we're five steps
mm,
closer towards world peace. And if we all do it, then we all reach world peace.
Wow, beautifully said. I love your quotes, on Instagram. They really resonated with me. I love the name of your website too. Oh, it's Happy Souls. That put a smile on my face when I saw it. Like, oh, that is so beautiful and very pure. That's what came to me immediately as the energetic resonance was like, this is coming from a pure source because my heart opened. I was happy immediately just by kind of reading the name and looking at it. So it's funny how life communicates, right, in very interesting ways. So let me see the quotes. I have so many here, but I think I wrote it the ones that really caught my attention the most. You said, a funny thing happens when you find inner peace. All of your external problems seem to disappear. That's interesting the way you said you seem. So they don't disappear. It's just that we don't identify with them anymore. We know how to, we look at them, as you said, we become the witness, or this is something else.
They seem to disappear because you're creating them.
Hmm.
It
Ah,
was you that created them. So once you found peace within yourself, suddenly you don't look at things in the same way, right?
yeah.
So they were never there anyway. What is the difference between a good day and a bad day, except for the quality of thoughts that pass through your mind, right?
Yes.
It's all your perception. So when I started finding peace within myself, it was like all of these things that used to come to annoy me all the time just dried up. They just disappeared. Because I've changed I'm now looking through the peaceful scope.
Mm,
I'm not,
mm,
when you're angry, everything angers you. When you're frustrated, everything frustrates you. When you're
mm,
peaceful, everything's peaceful. But the other thing I noticed as well was the quality of people that started arriving in my life when I found inner peace. It was really quite a unique experience. It was suddenly
yeah.
all of these amazing people just appeared in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. How do you see this idea of choosing, of free will? Do you actually believe or think that we are choosing, like to be here now? The words that are coming out, is that a, oh, that's a choice, less choice?
I think when it comes to thoughts, it's very much like the breath. It's a voluntary and involuntary action. So we have
Yeah.
thoughts that arise naturally, and then we have thoughts that we can think. So if I said to you now, imagine a pink elephant, you could do that, right? Or you could
Yeah.
think about that. But if you let your mind just wander off and do its own thing, then you have involuntary thoughts. So it's the same with the breath. So I think when it comes to choosing, I think we do have the power of choice. Part of me sometimes feels like we are just on this roller coaster of life, and we kind of pull at the seat a little bit, and it goes left, and we think, oh, I done that, and then next
Yeah.
thing it goes right, and we think, oh no, I'm losing control, you know. And I think when you reach peace, you learn to just continuously relax into the flow
Mm,
of life. If it goes right and you wanted it to go left, then you just go, okay, well, I'm on the ride. Let's see how it is. But in my experience, when life kind of changes, unexpectedly, we try and cling on to the way we want it to be or a preconceived idea and outcome, and therefore
right.
we create our own suffering. But in my experience, if we allow life to do what it's going to do, because there's an infinite amount of intelligence behind this thing, right?
Right.
It knows what it's doing. We will end up in a place that's far more profound and beautiful than what we can even think of, right? And this
Mm,
is what I teach people with manifestation. You know, how your manifestations come into fruition are not how you're imagining them. So you have to give up your attachment to the outcome.
yeah.
It's kind of like people think I want a job and it's going to come from LinkedIn. So they're always looking on LinkedIn. But if they give that up, they'll likely decide to go for a coffee at a place they've never been before. And
Mm,
somebody will
mm,
turn around and want to hire them for a job. This is how it
that's
works. And
true.
And this is how, this is how this worked. Like I thought I want to start doing more podcasts and interviews and videos. I woke up one day and had an email from you. So, you know,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible. So I
Yes.
think when it comes to control and choosing, I think, life's kind of like a juggling act of four things, really. It's about being strong and being soft and learning when to hold on and learning when to let go. And we kind of
Mm,
juggle those four things, and the more we get better at doing those things, the smoother life runs in a way,
mm. So something else that you said that relates to fear again. Let fear be the thing that shows you the way. So those are the quotes that resonated with me immediately because I always wanted to be there already, like spiritually, like the understanding of what this is. And I know I already know what I am. But then when it comes to the body mind, it feels like it takes so long, that alignment, because I went through a lot of trauma in childhood and all that. So healing, as you said, that's why the title here really inner healing, that's so appropriate. It comes together beautifully. And fear has to do with that. We talked about this before. But when it comes to fear, the way you have it here, let fear be the thing that shows you the way. That takes that inner work first, right, Harry? We have to do some work when it comes to letting fear be, or questioning fear, as you said earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I think the more you confront it, as I said previously, the less of a grip it has on your life, and then the less you
Right.
start believing in it. And then it becomes like your compass. It points you in the
Yeah.
next direction in life. You think, well, what else am I scared of? And you think, okay, well, I'm going to go into that. And when you consciously do that, you're free. The only way you can be free is to do the things that you're scared of. And I love conquering my fears. For years, I was scared of heights, right? I
Oh,
was
yeah.
really scared of heights, and whenever I went near anything like a cliff edge or something, my legs would wobble, and in a way, it was holding me back in life because in my younger years, I used to do a lot of extreme sports and stuff. I used to race motorbikes in the past,
Yeah.
and I'd always get scared of doing these things that involved heights and stuff like that. So one day, I went for a walk alone down to the cliff edge, actually in New Zealand, and I was about 150
Oh,
meters up of this
wow.
vertical cliff edge, and I just had this thought: I'm going to conquer my fear of heights today. So I went
Mm,
over to the edge of this cliff,
wow.
and I put my foot right on the edge of it. It's like a sheer drop into the rocks, and I took a deep breath and I looked over the edge of the cliff, and my legs
Yeah.
started wobbling, and I just started
Yeah.
breathing into my lower dantian and breathing nice and deeply. And I stayed there for about 20 seconds until suddenly my legs stopped shaking and I was so calm, so peaceful. And I
Mm,
stood there for quite a while, and then I walked away smiling, knowing that I've completely conquered my fear of heights. And now I'm not scared of heights. My legs don't wobble, don't get vertigo. I can be really at peace around it. So it's these experiences
wow.
that make me want to continuously do the things I'm scared of.
Yes. Gosh, that's such a wonderful invitation. That yeah, when it comes to physical things, I say no to a lot of those things. Driving fast and all those things, I'm not interested. But
Yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not condoning like danger or driving
Yes.
fast.
Yeah.
It was more like it was more the little things, like it used to impede into my life to the point where even if there was a barrier around something, I couldn't go
Yeah.
near the edge of it. Yeah,
Yeah. So that was very limiting. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
There's something else that you said. Living the dream is important, but don't lose your heart in pursuit of it. So, that's another one. So, talk to me about the idea of purpose, like that we are trying to, answer that calling and live our purpose. But then, how do we? What is the practice when it comes to that, not losing your heart, and what does it mean to you, Harry?
So in my experience, the reason I wrote that is because when my purpose kind of sprung into view, and I realised I was ready to teach and help people, and when that sprung into view, that was my heart's motive. I'm going to help people. I'm going to do this. And I started writing a book as well, and it was fantastic. And all of this stuff started unfolding. And then as I started getting, I guess, more successful in that, and things started happening, I then watched my mind kind of take over, like, oh my god, this is amazing, now you're going to make loads of money and you can go and do all of this stuff. and
Yes.
and then what
Yeah.
happened is I started noticing myself disconnecting from my heart and going more into the mind, and being like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this and all of these other things. And as a result of that, I kind of lost a bit of that magic.
Mm.
And then when I
Yeah.
reconnected into my heart, I felt the purpose blossom again. You know, this isn't about making loads of money and doing all of this stuff. It's actually just about helping people, passing all of
Mm.
this stuff on to people, watching people have the shifts that they need to have, that I've had in the past, and
Yeah.
allowing people to kind of fast track it, rather than going through all of the challenges I've had to go through to get to where I am. I can now help people do it in the easiest way,
Yeah.
because we've built the roadmap for that.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, so the more I reconnect to my heart and my heart's goal and my purpose, yeah, it makes things much more meaningful.
Yeah. Love that too. Yes. So the concept of the heart has to do, or this idea of a heart has to do with the love for humanity, isn't it? It's always doing something that's beneficial for this here and then and for everything else. It's never about only self, but it's about everything and everyone. And that goes back to the idea of the environment too, right, Harry? That we have lost connection with that altogether. That we, in a way, disrespecting ourselves, our own bodies and minds, and then we do that to others in our environment. It's so clear, that reflection too of how we treat ourselves. Yeah. That makes me sad, this idea that we have lost the connection with what we are. That's we have just gone so far now that I have had people saying that we are in this crossroads, that this planet might be destroyed altogether in order for us to learn that lesson. That, I don't know, have you, and that's another topic for another conversation, of course, but have you heard about that?
For sure, but I also feel like we have to go through this to understand in the future this is not the way. You learn what the right thing is by sometimes doing the wrong thing first.
Hmm.
you know and
Yeah.
and I feel like that's what's happening, right? We're in that process. People are understanding we can't go on like this, and this is what's making people change. Pain and chaos is like the wall that God puts us up in front of us to steer us on a better direction.
Right.
So we have to experience that chaos and that turmoil, unfortunately. And Michael Singer, who's a great author, he says pain's the price we pay for our freedom. And that was my experience, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like this is what's going on with the earth. We have to go to the brink of destroying this thing to understand how precious it is. So then in the
Yeah.
future, people won't ever go back down this path.
Yeah. So the other quote that was very interesting is this one. You said, nearly every desire that arises from the ego is paid for with pain and suffering. I guess that has to do with the topic that we are speaking of. So we need to be aware of our desires, right? What we really want. And that's something that a lot of coaches, they work on. It's all about, what do you want? You can do this, self-development. So what's the balance when it comes to desire? And how do you see that concept?
Well, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about not losing your heart in the pursuit of your dreams, because what
Right.
I'm seeing right now is I know a lot of people that are very successful, but they're very miserable, and they're continuously caught up in this idea that they need to be rich, and then they get what they
Yes.
want, and then they're on to the next thing. And unfortunately, we pay for that with our pain. We pay for that with our suffering, because we think it's truly what we want, but we're feeding the ego and killing our soul. We're killing our own
Mm.
heart sometimes in pursuit of these things. And it's the way I explain it to people is, if you can imagine there's like a cup inside of you, right, with holes in the bottom of it. When you go in
Yeah.
the search of and the hunt of all of these desires and pleasures externally from the realm of the ego, you're kind of borrowing happiness from the things around you temporarily while you're interacting with them. So when you buy a new car, that's like 1 liter of happiness into the cup, and you feel full for temporarily, but then it's always draining away. So you're on this consumer kind of diet, right? And it leads to misery because you're not whole within yourself. Then when you do the inner work, you kind of seal those holes up in the cup, and inner joy and contentment and wholeness fill up internally and start overflowing. And then you can fill the cups up of other people. Then it doesn't stop you from, it doesn't matter if you still want a car or a house. It's fine to have that, but you're not attached to them, and you're not finding or identifying your happiness and contentment within that object. So then you buy a new house, and it doesn't flood you internally with all of these, oh my God, chemicals. You're always content and calm no matter what's changing, around you materialistically. And then you're not attached to them. It's fine to have a nice house. It's fine to have a nice car. There's no problem in that. But if you're finding your happiness in them things, then you're going to pay for it, because you're going to continuously want the next thing and the next thing. And it's deteriorating. And as these physical objects deteriorate, your happiness deteriorates, Yeah.
Wow. Yes. A billion yes to that. Yes. Yeah. So when it comes to relationships, romantic relationships, all kinds of relationships people have, and especially the one with parents with their children, that I see that's a very powerful form of attachment. So I have met a lot of people who have lost their children, and that was not easy, to just witness that pain, even though had been 5-10 years. It was still very painful I could still feel their pain, through here. So what would you say to a mother who lost her daughter or son when it comes to attachment, to this message? Is that something that they would not, I would love to hear from you. What is the message there? What would be your message?
If I'm honest, that would be such a traumatic thing to experience within this human experience on Earth. And because I haven't experienced a loss that great, it would be really hard for me to actually fully understand what they're dealing with. But one thing I would say is to kind of look for the beauty in the situation, even though it's painful, and this is what being an artist taught me. It taught me to see things as they were without labeling them or naming them. And Alan Watts, he says, when we give something a name, we strip it of all of the other things it can be. And the Buddhists say that when you tell a child what a bird is, they never see a bird again for the rest of their life, because our mind is always trying to label it. So more often than not, when we feel pain and suffering, our mind just goes pain and suffering, and we don't actually look into what it is we're experiencing. We're just labeling it, we're feeling it, but we don't go into it. It's just pain and suffering. But within pain and suffering, there's a lot of beauty, and this is what set me free. I feel like I've been through like 5 lifetimes of pain in one lifetime, but now I'm living what feels like 5 lifetimes of bliss. Right? Because I watered my pain and suffering with love and acceptance and understanding. And as a result of that, what grew out of it was love and compassion and wisdom, But when we repress pain and repress suffering, it solidifies and calcifies in our hearts, and it restricts the flow of love from coming into our life. Okay, and then we carry it with us wherever we go, like a burden. So, if people are, suffering a deep loss, like they've lost their child, try and sit with it in a non-judgmental way and just feel it, just be with it, just observe it, and then accept it, understand it, and bring it into your heart and give it love. Give that suffering love, because you can turn pain into love. And you kind of comfort your pain and suffering in your heart, and eventually what happens is it sets you free.
Yeah. And then you said, we're almost at the end. I could keep going forever. You said, God does not listen to your words. He listens to your heart. Yeah, that stopped me too. And that's so true. And then, God, you said so many more. Let me see. Yeah. And then you said that before. Pain is the wall that God puts in front of us to steer us in a better direction, right? So, yeah, thank you for saying that, because it just came back to me now that was one of the reasons why I was doing this for people who are grieving. So, there's anything else? Oh my God, as you said, it's another quote that you have on your Instagram, which is Instagram.com/happy underscore souls underscore holistic well-being. I'll have those handles, they're clickable, so it'll be easier. But you also said it is only by doing the things that scare you that you can truly be free. So that goes back to the message of fear again, doing what scares us. And that in itself kind of scares the mind, even to think about it. Right. And one of the things that comes to mind, I would love to hear a comment from you, is people who are afraid of freedom itself. Like even at the very end, I don't know if you have heard about near-death experiences where people see the light, and it's very different from any light that we can see with our eyes, of course. That's the light of pure consciousness calling us to just merge with it and become one with it, that unity consciousness. And then most of us say no to it. And I had an experience of a vision where I said no to it, which I just ran from it. So is that something that you have experienced yourself too, of being afraid of what we are?
It is, yeah. So I've had that experience multiple times. So in my experience, what's happened to me is essentially what I say is, when we're on these spiritual journeys, whether it's like you go through Taoism and Buddhism or
Yeah.
Christianity or whatever,
Yeah.
essentially what you're doing is making a ladder to climb up to meet God on God's level, right? So when you get up on God's level, and this is a process people have to go through, it's kind of like you get
Yeah.
up there and then these gates kind of open and the divine will say, okay, well come in now, come in, you're here now. And something
Yeah.
inside of you will resist that freedom because, and this is what's happened to me, something inside every time this happened would say, oh, well, hang on a minute. We know how to get here now. Let's not end the game straight away. Let's go back down there and have some fun because we know how it all works now, right?
Yeah.
And let's just
Yeah.
come back, let's come back here later on. You've still got all of these years left in your life. And then I would climb back down the ladder oh no, it's happened again. So
Mm.
this repeated itself 3 or 4 times until I eventually got up there and thought it's time to move to my next stage of my journey. Um, and then what happens is the divine will turn around and tell you to push the ladder away and you have to lose your attachments to your
Mm.
spiritual path. And that for me is the hardest thing to do. And this is what has to happen. You have to understand that anything that's imbalanced within you has to be balanced. And the way that happens is by not picking sides. So if your spiritual path to get up to meet God was through Buddhism, God's
Mm.
going to tell you to turn around and push your attachments to Buddhism away and accept Christianity and all of these other religions as the same. You have to bring everything back into balance. And it's such a painful process because you don't realize the last place your ego is hiding is within your spiritual practices, you know?
Mm. Wow.
And I teach people this. I tell people, like, you have to be careful because without, you see it at the moment, it's happening a lot, right? People embark on this spiritual journey and then suddenly they grow dreadlocks and they get a spiritual
Yes.
tattoo and they develop a spiritual one-upmanship. Like, I'm better than everyone because I'm on the spiritual journey. And I tell people, if you're not careful, your ego latches onto your spiritual practices like a like
Mm.
a like a leech, like a parasite, and it feeds off them. And you're actually making your ego stronger. And it's the worst ego trip you can go on because you don't know you're on it, right?
Oh, yes, right.
People think they're not on it because they're on the spiritual journey, but they're actually on it way more than anyone else. Because if you say to someone who's, draped in jewelry, you're on an ego trip, they'll say, yeah, I know I am, and I love it.
Yeah.
Whereas you say
Yeah.
to someone who thinks they're super spiritual, you're on an ego trip. No, I'm not. They're in denial. So it's dangerous. So this is what I teach people as well is, be prepared. If enlightenment is your goal, be prepared to give up everything you think you are, because it's painful, but we are scared of freedom. And I was for years.
Mm.
I felt like I would lose the biggest part of me, to walk through that final gate. And I think it's the Zen Buddhists. They say something quite beautiful. They say, at the start, you start off like everyone else. Then you embark on a spiritual journey and you think everyone else is a bit weird while they think you're weird. And then you
Yes.
reach enlightenment and then you end up normal again like everyone else.
Mm, yes, right.
You,
Right.
you,
So
you
true.
end up back where you were when you started, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And but yeah, I think people are scared of it. I was scared of success for years. It was something I had to overcome. When life finally went my
Yeah.
way, because I'd experienced so much pain and challenges my entire life, when it finally went my way and I started succeeding, that was a huge path for me that I had to go down. To allow myself to receive, allow myself to live a good life,
Yeah.
and allow myself to be free.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it has been wonderful to talk to you, to be in your presence. And to end the conversation, I want to go through some of the services that you offer. So life coaching services that include, wow, so many things: overcoming addictions, tackling fear, anxiety, life and career changes, career development in business strategies, mental and physical well-being, breathing techniques and mindfulness, meditation and qigong, art therapy. I love your photography too. It's really beautiful though. So you offer photography therapy as well, guided meditation, and you're ready to speak. You're just a beautiful speaker. I would love to see you more everywhere. And you have you offer a free online consultation too. Everything is on your website, happysouls.co.nz. So everything will be clickable. Your Instagram and YouTube, everything will be there when we publish this episode. So at this very end, I want to ask you. Wow, I was about to ask you a question, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have a question to ask you. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, when questions disappear, that's a good thing. Was there anything that you left unsaid, Harry, for this conversation?
Um, I guess what I'd like to say is a massive thank you to you for allowing me to
Okay.
share this
Oh,
platform with you. When you contacted me and I looked through, your platform, I started thinking about all of the doubts you had to overcome and
mm,
fears and challenges to get to where you are and create this channel through your love and your dedication. And now
yeah.
you've allowed me just to come and step on it with you, and share this amazing platform. So thank you so much for allowing me to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I honor that. That's doing that in all of us. That's not really, and I have to be careful not take because I don't take credit for anything. And sometimes it might sound a little the opposite, right? Oh, she's arrogant. She doesn't take compliments. But I know that the universal intelligence, the divinity in us is doing this. So I know that. So I have a hard time kind of accepting compliments for anything. I'm like, wait a minute. We're just dancing the same dance here. That's the truth. That's really, I have to say with confidence, it is the truth. I can't take ownership over anything. But for language sake and to honor to the experience of being human, of course, yeah, I think your presence is Harry in this body mind. And I think the energy and, that it took for you to be here and all the pain that you endured and you were ready to transform or kind of overcome or just kind of let go. So it's truly, truly beautiful to be in the presence of humans like that. So thank you again. And I would love to be in touch. We'll be in touch again, Harry. Bye for now. Have a wonderful, beautiful day where you are in New Zealand.